Hello, and welcome back to Trailblazer MTG. My name is Paul, or Prop, and in this video we will be doing a ground-up build of a new deck based on some of the new cards that came out as part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set that recently released. We have the deck build screen here open in Magic Arena, and I'm actually going to go through this from step by step. If you have never built a deck on Arena before, or if you've never really built a deck before, then I'm kind of going to go through my thought process and the steps that I take to go from this blank screen to hopefully a 100 card singleton deck. So the first thing that I do, obviously, Trailblazer does use the Pioneer card list, the card pool, so I will be selecting Pioneer here, which you can see will change what is available. And the deck I am planning to build, I tend to give all my decks the Trailblazer tag just in case there's any confusion between some of my other decks. I am going to be building ninjas. So as part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set, we got quite a few new ninjas, and the ninja mechanic, whether it be ninjutsu or sneak, along with also the through the omen paths in web ability, are all very good, and in web also synergizes somewhat with the Duskmourn survivor ability. So that's where we're going to start. In terms of the color pie, the base of ninjas, especially ninjas outside of TMNT, is the blue and black. So we're going to start there. We're going to look at a couple of the other colors. I think this will be a 3-color deck. I think just for density. I have a preference, a thought about what I'm going to build in terms of the third color, but I'm going to actually work through that on this as part of this video. So the first thing I want to do is look for all of the cards that have the ability ninjutsu. One thing that you will notice is that I own a copy of every card here. That is actually not necessarily true, and Arena by default has a filter which only shows you cards that you've already collected. So what I am going to do is add in the not collected tag, and I'm actually, just to be safe, going to remove all the color restrictions here, because as we can see, once you remove the color restrictions, we see that there is a white creature and also a couple of green creatures. So first of all, let's add some of the more powerful blue-black ninjas. So really, when I first start building a deck, I kind of, at a high level, read a card, determine if it's completely outclassed power level, if it's really not doing anything that I want it to do, it doesn't fit with the synergy of the deck, I won't put it in. But otherwise, I'm kind of a put more in and remove later than I am a try to be judicious about adding to the deck. So first of all, I'm going to quickly work through these, and we'll see what gets added in. So these two commons I don't think I'm going to be adding. They don't really have strong enough text on them to be really added. That's our initial run of ninjas in terms of the blue and black. If we look in white, 2/2 double strike with ninjutsu for 4 I don't think is really pushing me towards the white side of things. If we look on the green side of things, the Springleaf Avenger is a very powerful green ninja. I'm going to actually put it in over here because we're still not 100% sure on our third color. I will add in the Kapatek Wrecker. I don't know if it's super strong in terms of what we're looking to do, but for now I think it meets a higher threshold to be included over the Trailblazer Kitsune. So the next thing we're going to want to do is look at the new mechanic, which is sneak. Now, using this text, we'll put in other cards that don't have the ability sneak but have the name sneak, such as the sneaking guide. But it does give us, it will give us everything we need, plus some stuff that we don't particularly need to see. So, looking through, I'm going to go through these cards with a little more detail, especially considering they are brand new. And these cards are probably some of the reasons that I would be pushed towards choosing white as the third color over green. Springleaf Avenger is a very powerful card. The other two are fine options, but if we look through the white Turtles cards that have sneak, there are some fairly powerful effects here. I'm not with only four cards that have sneak in red. I'm not going to go into red right now, but I'm going to look through the green cards to see what I think might be again worth including. So this being a black and white card, it would go into the white side of things. Same as Karai. So after our initial adding, really we're only seeing two green cards that we really want to include. And while they might be strong enough to splash as a fourth color, at this point I don't think they're going to get in, but for now I am just going to move them to the sideboard so that we don't forget about them. As for everything else, these are going to, I think we're going to include these in the deck list, and we're going to move forward from there. We just rearrange them in a mana value order so that we can see where we are with all of these items. So at this point, I've gone through the first step. I don't like working on my mana base until I've finished building the rest of the deck. Maybe it will usually get added before the final tweaks, but for now, in general, unless I'm going either really low to the ground or really big mana, go long kind of games, I am looking to have around 39 lands. So I'm just going to put 13 of each of the basics in here, which will give me a sense, once we've added the remainder of the cards we're looking to add, will give us a sense of how many cuts we need to make to get down to a reasonable number of get ourselves down to 100. So the next section I wanted to look at in terms of cards was in web. And the reason we are looking at in web is because of the thing we're actually going to be looking at just after this, which is cards that care about leaving the battlefield. Obviously, ninjutsu and sneak returns creatures to your hand, and so anything that cares about leaving the battlefield, we want to make sure that we include those, and web is another way for you to get creatures to leave the battlefield. And now we're back to looking at green options. I don't think any of these green choices are, we're not going into red. These two are really powerful creatures. Interestingly, ninjutsu is a activated ability, it's not a cast. And while Sneak is, this one wouldn't trigger the casting a creature spell. Not always going to trigger in this deck, so again, probably not a reason to push to include this card. So the next thing we're going to look for is, as I said, the Survivor mechanic. Oh, Survival. My mistake. There's anything but the Survival mechanic. So we're going to quickly look through this to see whether there's anything. Having a survival creature, attacking with it, there is a cost to returning it to hand for Sneak or Ninjutsu. I think for the remainder of this video I'm going to just try and say Sneak, so I'm not having to say both. They are mechanically different, but functionally they're kind of the same for what we're looking to build into our deck. So unfortunately I don't think we're seeing a lot of survival mechanic options that we want to include. It's always worth looking, interesting stuff that can be there, but I don't think we're really seeing a lot. 4 mana is quite a lot for a creature, and I don't think it's going to help us all that much, and these effects just feel a little slow for what we're trying to do. So the next thing I want to look at, and I mentioned it earlier, specifically when we were talking about leave the battlefield effects. So this is where we start to look into non-keyworded mechanics, where we're trying to look for a specific type of effect. And one of the things you kind of have to do is either look for a specific card that you know has a line of text on it, and then look for that line of text, or if you know the line of text you're looking for, you can just search for it. So I believe that the line of text I'm looking for is leaves the battlefield. So I'm going to take a look through this. At this point, I think we're kind of locked in on the Esper color pie, so I will be looking at those, and there are quite a few cards here, and not a lot of them care about the object itself leaving the battlefield, which isn't always what we're looking for, especially not on a creature. So I'm also going to look for the text another. So the way this works is it's looking for the exact text leaves the battlefield, those words in that order, but it's also looking for the word another anywhere else on the card. So here we go. So Suki, very useful, great way to get tangential benefit, and also it buffs other creatures. We're going to be a creature heavy deck, useful to put in. The double white might be an issue, but we will bear that in mind when it comes to cuts. Super Shredder, any permanent leaving the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter. Very useful. That's going to go in. Posture Taker could be a useful option. Steal one of their creatures, cast it, and then ninjutsu this back to hand to then cast it again to exile one of their other creatures, which we can potentially just leave. I'm going to include it. Again, it might end up on the cutting room floor, but we're going to go for it for now. So this was kind of a niche side of the include. Not a lot of cards with this effect, but the two that we've added that I think will be very strong contenders, and the third option, all useful to definitely include. So there is another component that I want to include in this deck, that is the enablers. We have a lot of cards that want to return a creature to hand in order to get them into play, either for a bigger effect or at a discount. So one of the things we do want to look for is the enablers, because both Sneak and Ninjutsu require a creature to not be blocked. As I mentioned before, if you do not know the exact text that you're looking for, see, I do know a creature that has the line of text that I am looking for, which is the Silent Hall Creeper. So the Silent Hall Creeper says this creature can't be blocked. So we are going to use the words can't be blocked. So now we're going to look through the colours that we have and see which creatures that are not blockable are the ones that we want to include as useful options to enable our sneak abilities. So I've now added the can't be blocked creatures to the deck. So in general, I kept it at 2 mana or below. The only cards that are 3 mana are these Planeswalkers. Kaito, which creates ninja tokens that can't be blocked, useful for enabling the ninjas. We have Nico Aris, who can tick up to make any of the creatures that we have unblockable. And Splinter, which both enables ninja abilities to trigger multiple times, and also can make sure other ninjas can't be blocked. So some of our cheaper ninjas, or even our more expensive ones, if we want to flick them backwards and forwards, very useful to have that ability. All the other unblockable or evasive abilities, as you can see, are at 1 or 2. I think actually in general some of the 2s are probably going to be removed, some of the conditionals, because we're already at 100 and I know that there are some other cards I want to add, especially some cheaper art cards with enters abilities or other types of evasion that are in general just a better rate. So now we get into the more difficult to explain part of deck building. I've gone through and I've added the keywords, the most important creatures and effects. However, there are a number of creatures that are available in Pioneer that work well with this synergy, but aren't necessarily 100% built into the synergy. So these are often creatures with enters effects. So we're going to quickly look through this. I'm going to add in a few options that we can think about as more value includes. There's a couple of creatures that I really want to make sure that I'm including, and when I get to them I will mention. Skylight Apparition. This is an exile effect that permanently removes a creature. They would get an XX illusion to replace it, but if we can repeatedly bring this back to hand and bring it back into play, we can even exile those illusions and then they don't come back because it is based on the mana value. So, a very useful thing to include. Flitterwing Nuisance, being able to play this early, potentially remove the counter on it to draw, return it to hand, and replay to rebuy that counter. Very useful. I want to definitely test that out. Also, sorry, when it has it's a key part of the Kaito deck. I want to make sure that's also included. This is actually a very useful option. It's a 2-mana enchantment. It creates a 2/1. However, we can return a 2/1 that they do not want to block and kill. However, if they don't block and kill it, we can get rid of it to sneak or ninja in another creature and still get the solvability, which also gives us a second version of the demonic tutor effect that we have with Splinter's technique. We will yes, I don't give back a card. However, if we just give a card and play this, we can then see if we want to reset card or something better for that tutor. And these creatures that we will say, the one that I have in my brain is a card. It's one, but I feel like we can kill something you can buy something else to do that effect. Very useful. I think those are small cards you're looking at, we could do similar things with. I think I'm going to include some TNT from TNT set. It would be a 2-mana creature, and I believe it's not effective, so I can't see it. I'll come back for it once I read it. One thing I try and do is initially I am go through a full list of creatures that might be just a key look for a soundtrack. I'm making a note to look for Mr. Raking. I'm going to skip on over to the gold cards now. Okay, so now we're at gold. There are some options that we want to make sure that we have covered, and being able to airbend multiple creatures while also being a flash option, useful to have. When I was looking for the Ruthless Lawbringer, we do have ways of making tokens and extra creatures, and being able to sacrifice one of the small creatures that we may have generated to repeatedly potentially destroy an online permanent, very useful, and one I want to include. So now I'm actually going to go back and check. We're looking for the Minister. It has a very useful ability to generate rats if a permanent left the battlefield under our control this turn. So that is one I want to include, and that's actually, this mechanic is a good reminder, is what I want to check. If I could spell. If I could spell. Okay, I think this is an interesting one that could be included. It's a little expensive, but it does exile our opponent's spells and gives us a chance to cast them. So, right now, this is the base of the deck. We have 109 cards, which means we do need cuts. And there's probably some key base level spells that we do want to include to make sure that we are able to execute that game plan. So I think what I'm actually going to do right now is kind of add manually those really important cards. Before I do so, I'm going to quickly take a look. So right now we're actually fairly evenly split, blue, black, and white. I think of the creatures that we have, white is probably the one that's going to get cut a little more aggressively, followed potentially by blue. I think black might end up being the more prevalent color in the deck, which is why I'm going to focus a little more on black removal and disruption. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of the more important adds that I want to make sure that we get. So now we have the build, the base build. Obviously we are well oversized here and we'll need to cut down. I think honestly the Pixie, as useful as it is, I don't think it's where we want to be. Same with, unfortunately, the Novice Inspector and the Trailblazer Inspector. Looking at it, I think this microsizer may not be also what we're looking for. However, for now, I think the rest of these can stay where they are. At the 2-drops, I don't think this is really doing enough in this deck. It doesn't really have enough support to be a useful option. I'm going to cut it. Question is, do we want this unblockable creature that we can flip, but we would need to add a red mana source into the deck? I'm going to leave him in. I don't think we actually care about the backside of this creature beyond the connive, so let's leave him in. He's a 2-mana unblockable, but he may end up again getting cut. Unfortunately, I don't think Sig quite does what we want, because on entry he does not particularly give us a unblockable. He does not let another creature be unblockable that gets us a benefit, because if we are returning it to our hand... Actually, I took myself into it. I think I'll leave Sig in. I think Darval, even as a 1-mana 3/3 potentially, is unfortunately kind of outclassed. It's really just a... we're not that heavily into the aggro plan, and he does not have any kind of evasion. People are incentivized to block him, so it's not even like we can use him as a ninjutsu enabler. Looking at our list for now, we only really have 2 artifacts in the deck, and one of them is the creature that cares about artifacts. So I'm going to remove this, and same with Donatello. As interesting as Nico is, I don't think I want to include him right this moment. I don't know whether he's quite doing everything I need to. And the shards just aren't really what I'm looking to do, beyond him generating, him making other creatures unblockable. Sun's an interesting question. Are we going to have 2 or more creatures enter on multiple turns? I don't know that we are, so I'm actually going to... but it's worth thinking about. But for now, I think I'm going to remove him. I think for now also Hostage Taker, probably going to get cut. I think there is plenty of other strong options that we have in this deck. And as interesting as it is, I think the Lightsteel Inquisitor probably going to get cut as well. So we're now down to 103. A couple more cuts and we will actually be close to having a deck. And then I'll quickly talk about what we might need to think about for as we start to test this deck, and what we may need from to re-round this out. I think Ang is probably going to end up cut for now. Again, very strong card, very useful. I just don't know if it's fully doing everything that we want it to do. Let's take a quick look with Umezawa. So if I'm honest, I think apart from potentially himself, a lot of our 1 power or toughness creatures are either going to be bigger in a lot of cases or already have sufficient evasion. So I'm going to remove Umezawa. Feels a little weird, but I think in terms of lore and the theme of the deck, but we have I believe his son, so I think we can do well with that. And I think for now I'm going to remove Temet. I think Temet is an interesting card. I think it's definitely worth including and testing at some point, but I think in the initial build that we have, this is kind of where I want to be. And that is the initial build of this deck. It is incredibly creature heavy. We are looking at having 43 creatures, 25 of which are ninjas. Beyond that, we have a few instant sorceries. The artifacts we have are also ninjas. We have a couple of enchantments, in most cases enchantment creatures, or a case and a class which either enable or bring creatures along. We have 2 Kaitos, and then our 39 lands. I think this is definitely an interesting build, and I am interested in trying it out. Now, the final step is lands. So I'm going to go to the lands. There's a few things that I always do with lands. So first up, I'm going to bring it down. Actually, as we're checking, so as I said, we lower on white, we have a reasonable amount of blue, but black is our heaviest color. So we're going to have a single plains, 2 islands, and probably 3 swamps, and that's going to be our base. So the next step, in terms of utility lands, I don't know that we want the Abandoned Air Temple. We're going to be bringing creatures in and out. I don't think spending 4 or 5 mana's worth of activation to put +1/+1 counters on our creatures is as useful as we want it to be. I don't think we want the creature land that is in white. Encampment could be useful, however, I will include it for now. Aganjo, 100%. The Neon Dynasty legendary lands are all very powerful in basically any color, and so they're kind of auto-includes in my opinion. I do like Agnicala. I think it's a very good late game card selection. Allows you to churn through if you are drawing lands, things like that. I think I'm going to include it. It might get cut, but for now it's a very useful option. As I say, the Neon Dynasty legendary lands are almost auto-includes for me at this point. I think Glasspool Mimic is actually a really interesting include in this deck. Yes, it's a tap land, however, being able to get a second copy of some of our more powerful ninjas for 3 mana, interesting idea. Rumbleco, yes, 4 mana, but it does create what is essentially an unblockable creature. So I think that's a good tech land to include. I'm going to include Malika Rebirth. We are a black-based deck, and being able to end some of our good enters effects and just protect a creature, along with Takanuma. Again, these Neon Dynasty lands. So now we're into dual lands. The way I approach the fixing component of a deck is if it's in this case we're looking at the 2 support colors. Flood Farm Verge is base white, and blue is the color we'll need a little more often. I will include it, but it's probably at the top of the list to cut. I will tend to prioritize the fast lands over slow lands. Plains or an island, we can't always guarantee that, and I'm trying to get as many untapped sources as possible. Hallowed Fountain, pay 2 life, comes in tapped, perfectly fine. The only cards that I will include as automatically that always enter tapped are the Surveil lands. These are incredibly powerful early, they're even more powerful late. I always want to make sure that I have the full range of Surveil lands available. Generally, again, creatures with evasion, but we don't particularly want to be returning lands to our hand in order to make our ninjutsu go, so I'm actually going to deprioritize a lot of the creature lands here. Fast land over the slow land. And I think that makes sense for our blue-white. Now onto black-white. Bleachbone Verge, it's base black, and white is the support color in that, so really good option. Now when it comes to black, black is one of our primary options, so we want to make sure that we have we are prioritizing that color. And just because we do have Goban and we may want to include, we may want to hit his transform ability, I'm going to add in the Raucous Theatre. Black, red. Black's our main color. Red is literally a 1-card splash. So this will be the nod to that to allow us to both flip Goban if we need to, and also gives us access to an extra Surveil land should we need it with a late fetch. So now we want to make sure that we have our fetches in. So one of the key texts on fetch lands is pay 1 life, and there are some other ones that have that available. So as you may have heard in my format introduction video, the enemy fetches show up when you search for Pioneer legal cards. However, they are not legal in Pioneer. The other cards that are banned, the ally colored fetches, are legal in Trailblazer, and so those are the ones that we will be adding. So that will be Bloodstained Mire, Flooded Strand, Windswept Heath, Polluted Delta. We will also be including Starting Town, and for now, Mana Confluence. The other thing that I want to make sure that we have, because they are very useful in these Kindred type decks, are the creature type, creatures type matters decks cards. Sorry. So we have Cavern of Souls, really useful, especially for the sneak ninjas. Obviously, the ninjutsu ninjas can't be counted, but the sneak ninjas can be. So useful to have in. Secluded Courtyard also deals with some of our Kindred spells, which I do not believe we have any Kindred spells in there, but useful for the sneak ability anyway. So now we're up to 102 lands. I think Mana Confluence in general, we're not the heaviest 3-color deck, probably doesn't necessarily need to be in there. And so I think what we are going to do is potentially just cut one of these black-white lands. I think the black-white slow land is probably what's going to get cut. That gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Black-white, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Blue-black, and 1, 2, 3, 4. White-blue. We have They'll Covenant Encampment, comes in untapped if we control a swamp, which is fairly likely. Aganjo, very powerful. Agnikella and Odawara in blue. Realm of Ko and Takanuma in black. 3, 2, and 1 for the basics, and then we have the fixing. Actually, thinking of the Cavern of Souls, this actually doesn't fix us for any of our ninjutsu spells, which we are planning to use a lot of. So I think Cavern of Souls is actually going to be cut at this point. I believe I'm missing... No, red-green is the 5th fetch land. Red-green is not a colour that we want to have as a fetch, but with having 6 basics, I think Fabled Passage can get in. So that's our deck. I'm going to remove these 2 from the sideboard, but this is our deck. We are at 37 lands with 2 model dual-faced cards. We have a 6-drop at the top end, but most of our curve tops out at 4. We're 5 here for the sneak cost, but still, that's primarily 4 for what we're looking to cast. So I think that's in a pretty good spot to be in. I didn't quite go over the removal suite earlier, so to quickly go over the disruption/removal. We have Thoughtseize for hand attack, Requiting Hex, cheap removal, Intimidation Tactics, another hand attack, Fatal Push. This is actually reminding me, I do want to go quickly and look at Revolt cards, because Revolt does not care about them going where the permanents go to. It just need to have left the battlefield. So I do want to see if there are any other Revolt cards that we want to include. Dreams of Steel and Oil is another hand attack, disruption, and then at 2 mana we have the Bitter Triumph. Obviously we have the Deep Cavern Bat for more hand attack, and that's actually it. A lot of our ninja type cards do come with removal. Ruthless Lawbringer, Skyclave is not a ninja, but it synergizes well. We also have things like Dokuchi Silencer and some of our creatures that give Death Touch as ways to remove creatures that have the temerity to try and block. So that's what we're working with right now. Let me quickly check for Revolt. Let's remove our land filter. So while there are some useful, some good options here, I don't think anything that really feeds into our strategy well enough to include. The one final thing which I didn't quite check through is the colorless and artifact spells. There might be a couple of items here that we want to include, maybe some specific hate pieces, and so let's quickly look through. We may need a couple more cuts if we add anything from this section. Okay, so I have added a few colorless cards. I'm not going to go too much deeper on this. With testing and discussion with other people, I will see if there's anything else that I have missed. In general, the community is very collaborative for this, and using Ben Wheeler's Discord, often we will post deck lists, talk about it, get feedback, and make adjustments. So I'm not going to go any deeper with the changes here, but the Ooze is an interesting, it's a graveyard hate piece, which can also synergize with some of our sneak and ninjutsu. Metallic Mimic, as I said, we have a lot of ninjas, so being able to have those ninjas come in bigger, really useful. Agatha's Soul Cauldron might not quite be there, but it's something to think about. Shadow Spear, the Trample, really disincentivizes blocking. I'm not 100% sure on this because the equip cost, having to pay 2 every time something comes in to equip, probably actually not going to work. It's a cool thought, but I don't think it's quite going to do the job. So now I just need a couple more cuts. Again, this is an ongoing process. It's worth going back through, making some changes, adjusting, and finding where you need to be. I actually think Last Running's technique is a very cool idea, but again, we're looking to increase our board presence rather than decrease it. And yes, creating three tokens is great, but if we use those tokens to sneak or ninjutsu something else, then we lose them forever. So I think possibly this isn't quite where we want to go. And if we're being very sensible, which I try to be, a 6 mana creature that needs to trigger disappear after it's entered to get the most benefit, I feel a little win more. Again, something to come back to if I feel like I need the reach, I need the top end. But for now, I'm going to take it out. Which leaves me with just one more cut. There is a temptation to cut a land, go down to 38, but I think that might be a trap. I think what I'm actually going to go for is getting rid of the Chupacabra. I think we have ways to deal with creatures. Often the biggest issue with decks like this is certain planeswalkers, and Chupacabra doesn't hit planeswalkers, whereas Skyclave does. So I think I'm actually going to cut the Chupacabra. And I think with that, I'm going to call this a deck. I think this deck definitely has some potential. So this was a slightly longer video that doesn't have any gameplay in it, but I wanted to go through the process that I go through when I build a deck, explain my thought process, explain the steps I take, and bring you all along for the ride. So if you have enjoyed this, please like the video. If you enjoy what I do as a whole, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.